Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much for joining this webinar, the first in a series of webinars about global capability centers, or GCCs, for the market research industry. And this first one is called Building It Right, Foundations for a Successful Market Research GCC. So thank you for joining us. The session's being recorded. It's a panel discussion, so there won't be any presentations or anything like that. As we go through the discussion, if you have any questions, please put them in chat. We'll either get to those questions during the discussion, or there's 15 minutes at the end, and we'll answer your questions. I'm delighted to be joined by this panel. I'm joined by a group of people that I respect greatly, and I've worked with each of them for at least 5 years, and I'll embarrass them by saying that I believe them to be among the best operations leaders in the market research space. And given that I've been in the market research operations space since 1991, I've come across a few. So I don't say that thing lightly. I'll introduce myself first, and I'll ask the panelists to introduce themselves. So I'm Andy Waller. I'm the head of strategic partnerships for Datamatics Research and Analytics division, and I've been doing this role for nearly 6 years now. Before I joined Datamatics, I was Chief Operating Officer at Hall & Partners for 8 years. And prior to that, I was at Synovate as the Global Director of Operations. So in those 3 roles, I've encountered these 4 people. Natalie, I'm going to start with you. Please, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name's Natalie Smith. Thank you for that kind introduction, Andy. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm former COO of Hall & Partners, and I boomeranged from London to New York. My accent's always the giveaway. And I've been working sort of in the GCC space for 15 years now, at all sorts of life cycles of GCC, from the build to the maintain to the evolve to the acquisition. So, Andy, it's a pleasure to be here today and talk about what we've learned along the way.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Natalie. Renee.
Yeah, I was afraid of that when Natalie started talking about accents, that you would ask me to go. Hello, everyone. I'm René Spaans. I'm based in Amsterdam. I'm working for a large HR consultancy company now as the head of operations, but I used to lead operations teams within Ipsos, and before that within Synovate. My experience is the last couple of years within Ipsos, I've been leading the global hubs, which encompasses around 1,500 staff and about 300 to 400 partners in other locations and other companies. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about as well about the GCCs, and thanks for having me, Andy.
Pleasure. Thanks, Renee. Thanks for joining us. Sławek, over to you.
Hey, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Andy, for inviting me. My name is Sławek Lehman. I'm formerly Senior Vice President at MarketCast, and I'm based in Los Angeles. I've been in the industry for 26 years and have been involved in the large-scale market research operation transitions long enough to observe a profound shift in the industry overall.
Thanks, Sławek. And finally, last but no means least, Vishal.
Thanks, Andy, for the warm introduction. I lead the research and analytics function in Datamatics, helping agencies and brands achieve their research needs leveraging technology. I'm also the subject matter expert for getting journeys started in the GCC world. Prior to this, 20 years in the field of research operations and consulting, working with Kantar, Nielsen, and YNR, and quite a few startups. Happy to be here on this panel discussion, talking about GCC and AI, how this can help kickstart organization the transformation journey.
Excellent. Thanks, Vishal. Okay, I forgot to say when I was talking about the housekeeping in the introduction, we're going to have a few polls. There's a couple of reasons for that, right? Polls, we can check that you're still with us. And we can also understand a bit about your sort of level of knowledge, your level of maturity with GCCs, and that helps us pitch this at the right level. So we're going to start with a poll that will come up on your screen now. The question is, how familiar are you with GCCs in market research? And you can choose one of these. Just take a few seconds to answer this. While we're doing this, Sławek, I'm going to come to you. Where do you think, and you have to gamble your appearance fee on this, where do you think the majority of people are going to head? Where do you think what they're going to choose?
I would choose, sorry, I don't have the questions and the answers in front of me, but I would say I would probably think it's going to be I dabbed a little bit with GCC, and I'm trying to learn more for the things that I want to do.
Yeah.
Next.
Okay. Yeah. Do anyone disagree with that or have a different opinion?
I think that plus already working with the GCC and maybe thinking about how to adapt or evolve it.
Right. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Okay, new to the concept.
Nice.
So
yeah,
Sławek,
I was
I'm sorry
wrong.
you lose your appearance fee.
So do I, Andy.
Yeah, okay. So new to the concept, and perhaps, perhaps that tells us a bit about, we should maybe explain what a GCC is a little more, right? So sort of what does a GCC mean in the market research context? Sławek, do you want to start with that question? Give us your point of view.
Absolutely. I think in general, I mean, the concepts in terms of the tactical way of looking at it really is to remove the boundaries, geographical, time zone, and I'll even say corporate boundaries to expand capabilities, get a lot more flexibility, and also the ability to scale while also keeping the budgets under within set limits. That's really from the technical, from the kind of tactile perspective. In terms of overall, what it does is it really is, in my opinion, a growth. It's a development of current goals set by a company and a better ability to deliver against those.
Yeah, but I guess it hasn't always been, right. If we think back, Rene, we think back when we were setting up. Well, we used to call them centers of excellence. In some way. And, I have to be honest, they weren't. At the beginning. So, but so what was the purpose of setting them up back then? And we're going back 20 years, I guess. But
yeah. Well, it was a bit of a mistake in branding at that point of time, wasn't it? Because those expectations were sky high, and we weren't able to deliver. But basically, it was an attempt to lower costs, first and foremost, but also to centralize the work we do and bring up a little bit more consistency in the way we work. But low, cost. What was the most important factor at that time?
Yeah, there was trying to find cheaper ways of doing the same work by sending them to places where you pay people less.
Yeah, right. That was it. Yeah.
I think so.
For a very short period of time, Andy, because that didn't work by, that wasn't enough to make it work. But I'm sure you're going to get there.
Yeah. Well, maybe Natalie, you can take us there. But so I was thinking though about the kind of jobs that we put, offshore. And Natalie, maybe you could talk about that. Where did you guys start?
We kind of started with, we had very disparate suppliers doing very different things, dealing with very different quality of input, and then delivering very different sort of output as a result of that. And so to your point, Andy, what we did was centralize and say, okay, we're going to have one scripting team that will take our input and obviously sort of digitize it and create a script for it. Right, we will take our table specs and create one spec. So it was everything from the value life chain, from scripting through to coding, through to data processing, through to some visualization. And then Sławek did, I think, a fantastic job of then extending that towards things like, external supplier costs and vendors and contract and all that sort of stuff. So it was taking, I think, the delivery function based on kind of what we thought, but then extending and expanding on that and pushing whatever we could because of the benefit of centralization and scaling and quality. I was a huge benefit.
Yeah. And I was just also thinking that of an evolution then, because when we started, and certainly when the market research industry started offshoring and outsourcing, it would outsource one function. So you'd have somebody who would do data processing for you, and you might, and we did at Synovate, have another company that might do survey programming for you, right? And they were kept separate, and that kind of evolved, didn't it, Sławek, at Hall and Partners? We didn't just have one function. We sort of put it all together and said, well, let's take it end to end.
That's right. Yes, I've been, a few of those to really understand where that the starting point for everybody is going to be different in terms of what people are trying to do, and it's going to depend on a lot of factors. Obviously the size, the budget, the strategy of the company, as well as just practical circumstances where you are. It really is. I mean, we are in operations here, so we always have to get that practical aspect of it. What can I do? How fast? With what? How does it make sense so it's cohesive? So for example, in one aspect, it was around consolidating all the suppliers and consolidating and making sure that it's just a one-stop shop situation. In others, it could be that, I'm completely new to this and I want to start off small with the most cost ineffective areas of my business that now can be transitioned over, whether it's humans or whether it's automation. And an other aspect could be, I have a very small business, and I have literally all I need is basically infrastructures to help me process my work. And then in that case, you're really looking more on a project by project or team by team basis. So I think it's so important to start while getting into it is to ask yourself a question: what is that you're trying to achieve with expanding the capabilities through GCC?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And Vishal, just can we maybe start talking about? So that was, Sławek started to bring us into sort of evolution and also the things that you need to think about before you start setting them up. But so we started off with, okay, it was about cost arbitrage primarily. It was then perhaps about some centralization as well, but we still faced long setup times, and we still faced maybe a lack of domain expertise. But how have you seen this evolve? You've built capability centers for Kantar, among others. What's the evolution that you've seen?
Before we start about how modern GCC is and what's happening recently, I think a quick take on the legacy world, like Rene called out, that no matter what you branded it, the focus was on cost. And not just cost, there was clear idea that each agency wanted to focus on what their core capabilities are. And that was mainly on research consulting and the advisory that they would want to provide to clients. So incidentally, in that conversation, they realized that what is not core to the business is what should get offshore. So that was a conversation 20 years back, that scripting, data processing, all of this is not core to business, and let somebody else take care of it because we don't have capabilities around this part of it. And that's fundamentally changing now. The recognition is that this is core to business and we need to have capabilities around it. And which is why the conversation is not only about outsourcing and the focus on cost saving, which was the past. It's about recognizing the fact that if you want to deliver end-to-end innovation, if you want to get the right platforms, be able to leverage AI in the mix, then you have to have a point of view and a say and a capability within every other aspect of work, right from server programming to data processing. Only then you will have that control. And what's changing, of course, is the way technology can help you transform that part. Probably why people have not spent so much time on GCC like we saw in the survey, because they were branded as very, very large, complex, multi-year engagements. That's again changing very, very fast. You don't have to really wait for so long. You can practically get started with a micro nano GCC in a very small pod setup with probably a 30-day zero capex setup, no investments at all, get the right partner, get the right talent, and probably identify a micro process which requires transformation, get it replicated within 30 days and transform in 90 days. That's the speed at which things are getting done today. But only with the recognition that this is core to business and required. If till the time you keep expecting that this is not core to the business, it will always be a cost saving strategy only.
Yeah, well, I think that's right. I mean, I remember Nielsen signing the deal with TCS, right? A 10-year deal for $10 billion. And it was, and it was all about cost savings. But that's obviously that was the biggest deal that any of us had seen in the market research space at the time. But that was a big, cumbersome, long-term. I mean, it's almost the opposite of agility, right? Even thinking about signing a 10-year deal now, I can't think of anyone that's allowed to do that anymore. So one of the things then that's clearly changed is the need to be more agile.
Yeah, Andy, the other thing I'd add, if you don't mind me interrupting, is
But of course not.
I totally agree with what Vishal's saying, that I think there's two angles, that three maybe. Client, there's kind of the cost arbitrage that we spoke about, but I also think that there's a real need for client value, and making sure that as operations we're always thinking around what the net benefit is to our client. I think where Vishal was going was that could either be through how you triangulate or connect data. It could also be speed and cost. So to Renee's point, it could be to remain competitive. But I think that with operations, we can sort of tend to look at our own shoes a little bit and go, okay, we're all about quality and timing and all the rest of it. But the other hat I think we have to continually put on is, well, what does it mean for our end client, and how is it differentiating at us, or how is it a step ahead of the other competitors? So I think that's a really important angle, and Vishal's right around the demand for that's going to get greater as innovation and agility gets stronger and faster.
That's a really good point.
And can I add, Andy? And I don't want to become the Dutch guy, talking about cost only, because we've got that reputation already. So let's get rid of that.
No, but that was the early days, and to Vishal's point and Natalie's point, I think what happened, after that more and more, and currently is just I think. The basic way of operating is that you bring partners and GCCs into complex situations where you're actually going to support the client, do stuff better. So it's not about replicating what you did in the exact same way and teaching a team to do that, but now you're asking them to help you improve. And I think that's the journey we've made, and I'm actually quite proud of that, sort of having been contributing to that part.
Yeah.
I actually agree with that. As I would, what I would say is as bold as, to a certain extent, expose your client. to what you're trying to do and what the benefits are going to be. So they're actually partaking again to a certain extent. Obviously, there's going to be some partition and some fence, but that's very important for them to understand that as well. That this is really benefits to the client. And I would also say that just like with anything with life, it's a continuum, right? So in terms of the benefits and in terms of the innovation, in terms of the benefits of actually the efficiency and anything else is really, this is more of a end game. This is a little bit later in that transition period. At the beginning, especially for the folks here online that are new to the concept, and not to really discourage or intimidate with a lot of kind of connections. It's like learning a foreign language. You start small with just words. So you start small, and as you get folks and as you get processes onboarded, slowly, but sorry, not slowly, progressively, but not really that slow, you'll start finding the opportunities for integration, for further understanding, for further, I would say, feeding off of the same strategy, where then the other teams can start helping understand and actually becoming then a proactive partner of really suggesting and of co-creating with the teams for the client, including the client to create better service.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Those are really good points. Actually, I hadn't thought about that at all. So, Vishal, can I ask you? So we came across this wording of the day, sort of micro and nano GCCs. What are we talking about there? What are they? What's the difference between micro or nano, and how are they different to the GCCs that we all knew, 20 years ago?
Yeah, so like you referred to it, right? That everybody remembers the news in TCS deal, and probably that's what everybody feared. That okay, when you talk about GCC, that's the kind of commitment you have to make. And most companies are mid-sized organizations, 50 people, 100 people. That's the kind of operations people run. And they think GCCs are not for me. I will probably run my operations, have everybody cross-train, every part of work everybody will do. And maybe if there is offshore requirement, occasionally I will out. So that's the kind of thinking that people got started with. That's exactly what is changing. And I think a lot of these models are getting evolved from the world of IT. The pace at which IT has grown is because thanks to the kind of evolution of models of partnership that are coming. Now, those models are really coming into world of market research, where you can actually start a very, very small pod. A pod is a combination of a skill set of a people that you will have, which is right end to end, which is practically mirroring your processes the way you do wherever you are doing it. They get started within probably a fortnight. Skills are no more a challenge. You get all kind of skills available quickly in any markets. Get the pod together, replicate your processes. So within 30 days, you have already expanded your bandwidth. Like Shavik called out, right? The advantage of working across markets is that you can practically then run 24/7. You don't have to wait for your sunrises to happen. You can actually have a chase the sun strategy, get people work in respective time zones across so that you have always 24/7 working. Get the processes replicated. And not just that, within probably 30 to 90 days, with the right exposure and involvement of experts, you also are able to get the AI infusion in that. Like there are broadly two pressures, right? One is the pressure like Natalie called out, time, speed, and quality, which the client will keep telling you that get better, get faster, get cheaper. That's an external pressure always is there. And then your CEO sitting right next to you. What are you doing about AI? How are you infusing this? I want new processes, forget about, and I don't have budgets for investments. How do you get the two things together, right? This is where GCC and the micro GCC comes into play, that you're able to replicate your existing process cheaper, faster, and better. At the same time, the savings that you get, some part of that savings get diverted in getting the transformation done. So you are able to, like we have seen, right? And you are aware of many of these case studies where clients probably have started very, very small with 8 people, 10 people, 20 people. And they are very targetedly focused on, I want my server programming to be automated. I want template-free automation. I want my reporting to be automated. I want a team of people who would probably, as in I have a team of 10 people doing survey management and fieldwork management. I want it to be completely automated. All this is possible as long as you have a clear goal in mind and the focus is clear that this is what you want to transform in the next 30 to 60 days. it's all possible through the full infusion of micro and nano GCCs.
Thank you. And it comes back to the point Sławek made earlier, but you have to be clear about what you want to achieve, right?
Absolutely.
Which is great. Okay. But I think then before we go on to the next topic, I think we'll do our second poll. So the poll will, the question will appear up on your screens. If you were to start a micro or nano market research GCC, where would you begin? Single choice, survey operations and data collection, data processing and analytics, insights and reporting automation, or technology and platforms enablement. Renee, time for you to gamble your appearance fee.
Yeah, 20 years ago, I would have said the first one, but I assume people will now go more for third or even fourth.
Right. Yeah, I still think people are going to go for data processing and analytics.
I think it's a trick question. The right answer is not in the option list. Like I was saying, it has to be a combination of pod setup where you put small teams across end to end, and that's how you can get transformation done.
Yeah.
So the question is wrong.
Questions,
I think we're
or the answers. The answers are wrong. There should be an other specify, shouldn't there? Or all of the above, or something, something like that. Right. Well, let's see. Let's see whether. There we go. Rene doubled his money. Okay. I was a close second, but I think you're right. That the right answer was in fact missing. Because as we said, and this actually this started a long time ago, but is accelerating and accelerating. This idea of saying, well, look, you can do one thing end to end, and as Vishal says, it doesn't have to start as a massive scale. It can grow, and okay.
I think it. Yeah, I think it's consistent with the point that I made earlier, which basically is, you can start small, or you can start where your pain points are. If you're new to it, most people are. The biggest pain point is the cost and efficiency.
Yeah. Okay. So now we've decided that we do want to set up a GCC, right? And we want to do that for, the reasons that we spoke about earlier, not just cost, but also bringing new skills to bear. So then what are the considerations about where, first of all, where you build it? And Rene, you've built a few, right? You've had to research a bunch of locations. So what were you looking for? What are the factors that you were looking for?
Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting information, by the way, online. A lot of the big consultants doing surveys or doing studies on this topic. I love the A.T. Kearney report. Been following that for years. Because it's something you want to look at as an operations officer in the business, but also you need that to inform management about stuff, right? And your question is, what are the main drivers, Andy? I'll come back to talent. I think that's number one, and I've heard it mentioned by the others today already. Obviously, it's very practical things like time zones. Can you work together? Do you have a window of opportunity to talk to each other? Because that communication is so important. And because that communication is so important, and I'll leave out cost, right? Because I've been talking about cost long enough, so that's a factor. Definitely is a factor. But one thing which I've underestimated all along is the cultural connectivity and the ability, between. You have to be a pitcher and catcher if we want to talk about baseball terms. I mean, you have to have a team, working together, and for that reason, it really helps if you build some connectivity between different cultures in the countries you're working with. So that's important as well, in my view.
Thank you. Yeah. So time zone, location, cultural alignment,
cost. Yeah.
Yeah, and cost, of course. Okay. Then what about the sort of the functions that we think are best suited to being part of a GCC? Natalie, where do you, I suppose, what's the evolution of function, do you think? Where do you start and where do you go to?
I totally agree with what Vishal's point. Like 10 years ago, I would have answered this very functionally, vertically driven. I don't know if I've evolved or what's happened, but I would have been like take this task and move it over here, and it would have been much more sort of almost task driven or functional driven, Andy. Nowadays, I think Vishal's right. I think I would be looking at the life cycle and working out and identifying what talent I needed to deliver that life cycle and that value proposition. I'd be thinking about it really differently, and then figuring out, back to sort of Renee's point, where are either the feeder universities or sort of locate the talent according to where I can then start to succession plan and promote that. So it may be more kind of engineering skewed, it may be more creative skewed, it may be more analysis skewed. So it's hard to answer without really understanding, back to Slavek's point, what you're solving for. Because it's probably, hopefully, based on what Vishal said, multiple things that we just sort of articulated: creativity, analytical, and data, some combination of that.
Yeah. Swami, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, this, what I would say is really, again, what is that you're trying to achieve for? And I think that regardless on how the functions are going to go, it's going to be by function, by things. I think that there's always going to be a very tactical knowledge transfer, and then very tactical kind of like a learning period, both skill set, expertise, as well as actually the cultural aspect of that as well. And I think all the other value adds will come after that. And then I think that is the second phase of really, really focusing on getting the formula right to proactively get the best of the new teams, wherever they may be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say something now that might be a little controversial, but I remember, okay, when we started doing offshoring, the assumption that everybody made was that that meant it would be worse, right? That the people that are offshore would not be able to do as good a job as the people that were onshore. And I still see that assumption made, I still see it with, some countries' presidents trying to bring work back to the US and things, right? There's a sort of, or in Australia, proudly Australian, there's that assumption still exists, right? And Vishal, tell us why that assumption's stupid.
Yeah. So that assumption may be right or wrong. I would not know, but I think the place where it becomes true. So while it is not factually required to happen, but it does get observed many a time that this is how you start, that it will be of lower quality. It ends up becoming lower quality. And that's not nothing to do with the kind of talent or the people or the processes. It's more about then gets into cultural aspects of it. The people who are working onshore, it's their clients, their job, their reputation on the line. And when you outsource, probably you're not transferring that reputation enough, not involving them as part of the culture and the company and the reputation that you want to build in. It is a process that you're transferring, which nobody in the food, where nobody cares. People either follow the process and get it right, or sometimes are not so intelligent and don't care about enough. So that's the fundamental part. Probably the pitfall that you have to avoid is not just outsource process for the sake of it, incorporate and get those people involved, which is why, again, outsourcing is different, where you are giving tasks out. A GCC is where you're adding people members globally. A global team is being put together who is part of the core team. The values and the culture of the core company get extended and get transferred to that. And the client, eventual end client for whom you're delivering, becomes the client of the offshore team as well. And I think that's a key driver, because then the ownership drives quality, and then you get the kind of work that you continue getting in the past.
What a good answer. I mean, that's because, and actually that's right. And that's a really important distinction. because with outsourcing, you're not necessarily transferring ownership. Renee spoke about sort of cultural alignment, and that's not just, you know, cultures in terms of nationalities, but cultures in terms of organizations as well, right? And so, yeah, if you're building a GCC, then you're imbuing it with your own culture and your own ownership of the problem. You know, and so maybe in the old model, people were not as stupid as I thought. But certainly, you know, certainly in terms of, you know, just to say this, in terms of initial, obviously it's clear for everyone, but in terms of talent, that is not anything to do with nationality and nation and being onshore and offshore and being expensive or cheap, right? This is, you know, you get talented people and you get untalented people, you get people that work hard and you get people that don't. But I think that's, you know, as you go through offshoring and the process of offshoring, sometimes you have to remind your people of that, I think. I certainly found that to be the case in organizations that I've worked in before.
Yeah. I think if I might add very quickly on that assumption, you know, the assumption that I've seen quite a bit that's very similar to what you're saying is this expectation of the switch on and switch off, right? And probably some of these assumptions about, oh, you're not as good or the quality is going to be lower is because of that switch on expectation that it's immediate. And again, it's a continuum. So at the beginning, there's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be a knowledge transfer. And as we move up the ladder and the chain of integration, that's when you start really seeing the expertise being applied to create the best of the value for the client.
Yeah.
So it's not a switch.
And let's be realistic. I mean, I've seen this many times that the talent in our hubs was really much better than the operational talent we had in the onshore countries.
But the thing is that you're residing next to your colleague, you know, who's asking you a question, or, you know, in a different floor or whatever. There's so much more forgiveness at that point of time. And I think that comes back to the cultural part you mentioned, Andy, that as a company, you have to be, you know, dealing with these kind of matters, that you empower the team in the hub to basically be part of the team and be considered to be part of the team, rather than be a black box, you know, computer says no. Joke is easily made, and that is something I think we've all experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think to play a little bit devil's advocate, or the other thing is, I also think it makes sense in terms of, you know, knowing where this is coming from. That assumption is that I think setting up strict guidelines and expectations, what is being delivered and what is the foundation of the new team is also very quickly, you know, through like metrics and through training and through basically to make sure that the company that engages in GCC has a very clear understanding in, you know, who they're getting at what levels, and then with what type of general skill set, right? Whether it's confirmed, whether it's whatever data collection, field management is exactly what is coming to the table in terms of expertise and skill set, and then also where does the training and the knowledge of the company, of the projects pick up. So that is a very, very important definition up front to make sure that both parties know where they are coming.
Yeah, right. I mean, you're all bringing us on to this idea, you know, some of the common pitfalls, right? So we've covered a sort of this not aligned, you know, misalignment of outcomes and cultures, lack of clarity around who does what. Natalie, any other pitfalls to avoid?
Yeah, a couple, I think, Andy. One, I think someone mentioned this, was senior alignment. I think that it's so important for the leadership team, the sponsors, to hold hands at the outset and say, okay, we're going to get challenged, we're going to get tested, but we're all in this for this reason, whatever the North Star is. I think that is absolutely critical. And when that gets tested and frayed, because it will, It's making sure that, everyone reminds themselves what the North Star is and what's going on. I think that is absolutely critical before you're kicking off. I think defining success we've talked a lot about that. And then making sure that, again, you're communicating throughout how it's going and what is and what isn't working. I think a couple of other things, Andy. I think it's, as we sort of talked about, expect to pivot. You may come in with a set of assumptions and they may be blown apart because the technology is further advanced than you thought, or people are adapting quicker, or whatever, or vice versa. So I think it's great to have a plan. It's great to pivot. And I think doubling down is kind of worse than being agile and going, oh, there's an unmet need here, we need to pivot. And that's life, and that's kind of what happens. We talked a lot about culture, and I think there's a really important point I wanted, which is little C culture. Use your company's culture to your advantage. So if you're a collaborative culture, then use that in order to create a seed team and to get buy-in at an early stage. If you're more hierarchical, then use that hierarchy but know your culture in order to manage change in a really effective way for your company. And I think that can be your greatest asset as change gets tested and it gets really hard. So I think really understanding that will help with communications, help with the pivoting, help with the governance, help with all of that.
Yeah, I'm not a great pivoter myself, but yeah, I recognise that I recognise the truth in what you're saying. When we started doing this, and this comes back, I think, to the agility thing, but when we started doing this, actually what you needed was determination, and you had to
Commitment.
You were going to get your hands dirty, you were going to get in some scraps, but you're right. Now, as we're now not saying, well, it's got to be a 5-year process and it's got to be 500 people, then the ability to pivot is really important. Vishal, what about your perspective here, and sort of thinking now about, okay, how do you scale this? If any other pitfalls to avoid, first of all, and then and then thinking about improvements and scale and things.
From what we have observed, especially with GCCs, apart from getting the goals right and alignment around that and ensuring culture transfers, which we all discuss, I think as you move that journey, the other important aspect is going to be also who calls the shots. There are practically 3 entities here. There is an onshore entity, there is an offshore leader, and there is also a partner who is helping you drive that whole process. If you don't get that right, it will always be a mess because then the priorities always conflict, and it has to be very clearly aligned about which domain, what kind of questions, what kind of autonomy you want to provide to the GCC to be able to run business the way it is supposed to be delivered. If you don't get that right, it's a very, very messy process. And we have seen quite a few retrenchments and shutdowns because this was not aligned right from the day one. So I think that's very, very important to call out, especially for people who are really studying about that part. And how do you ramp up? I think the best part of a micro nano GCC is because while you are not short-sighted or myopic, you're always focused on ROIs. And as you keep getting responses, as you keep observing that your ROI is always good, you are then encouraged to really ramp up rapidly and very, very fast. Like the question that we asked at the beginning, where do you start? The answer does not like in which function do you get started, but typically most companies have 2 kinds of work. A kind of set of clients who keep giving them recurring work. It is year-long, annual. It could be quick turnarounds or it could be tracking, whatever. But there is a core job that you always get, and there is an ad hoc work that you keep doing. It's identifying that which one do you want to get started with and giving the GCC. So typically, when you give that regular core part of the work, when you start transitioning that, is when you start seeing early success because most of the things are predictable. You know exactly what the pain points are, where do you want to optimize it. And once you are able to do it for a couple of clients, then you can grow very, very rapidly, very, very fast. Uh, like we keep saying in the world of AI and a lot of discussion that we do, AI can do magic, very, very magical things, but don't give the most complex problem with even your humans cannot solve. If you do that, you're bound for failure. Similarly, in the world of GCCs, give it a certain set of jobs, certain set of processes, a certain set of projects which are predictable, which are very well delivered. Try and get those replicated first and then scale up. That is what will give you the highest amount of ROI.
Mm. Okay, and just then, before we go into our last poll, I just like sort of throw this one open. So we sort of talked about what, where offshoring, outsourcing, GCCs, where that started, and then we talked about the evolution of where it is today. So where's it going to go next? What do we think? What's sort of what is the future of market research GCCs? What kind of things do we think we'll see in the next 2 years? I wouldn't look any further forward than that, to be honest. But yeah, anyone? I mean, I suppose, I mean, I'll throw this one out there, but obviously there's got to be something about AI in there.
Yeah.
So, and you talked about this earlier, Vishal. I mean, we're talking about market research agencies. They're not going to have, AI engineers on house. So does having a GCC give them an advantage there?
Yeah, let me give you a different example. So, and this is a different part of technology, a different world altogether. Like we have cryptos. What are cryptos and why are they doing so well? Because they are distributed ledgers. Very, very difficult to corrupt them or destroy any parts of it. And if you take that analogy forward, right now we're talking about there is an onshore and offshore and global capability center. As you move forward, there will be distributed capability centers or deploying capability excellence people that are world over. So it's not about centers, then you get into it. It truly becomes a global team which works together into delivering a project. I think that's where the direction is going to be. Of course, so all of them are going to be supported by AI. Many of the transformations would have happened. But then as we move forward, once a lot of these transformations get done, then you have clear global teams who work together without the clear distinction of what is onshore and offshore. It's about a global team coming together for delivery of projects. That's how I see things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's have our last poll. So the question is, what is your top MR transformation priority for 2026? Scaling global capacity, improving quality and consistency, reducing operating costs. That's yours, Renee. Improving speed to insights, and increasing automation and AI adoption. Vishal.
Yeah, I think it's the last one that most people would answer, increase automation and AI adoption. That's what the goal is. The key challenge, the key question is that where they're putting the money? I'm not sure of that. So while the goal is increasing automation, all the money is in reducing operation costs.
But they're linked, aren't they? Every time we talk to a poor old CIO whose CEO has said to him, "What are we doing with AI? What's our AI strategy?" And the poor old CIO doesn't know where to look. But part of the outcome of implementing AI and automation should be reducing operating costs, right? I mean,
exactly. You said it right. The outcome of implementing AI should be reducing cost, not the starting point.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's see. Let's see whether you've given an answer that pleases Vishal or not. Yay. Okay.
So I like the combination, Andy. I like the combination of the first and the last one. I mean, I think it's
yeah. I agree. Yes, I agree actually, and that's yeah. So that's good. I think and I would flatter ourselves that maybe at the beginning of this webinar we might have had some different answers. So who knows? But so that's really great. Thank you everybody for that. Okay, let's then have some Q&A. We've got nearly 10 minutes. Put it in the chat. I've also seen some in the Q&A, and I'm just going to pick some of these. Okay, with all the buzz around AI and machine learning these days, how do you see GCCs using these technologies to improve market research? And what steps can we take to make sure we're handling data privacy and ethical concerns properly? Who would like to have a first go at that one? Vishal, would you like to?
Oh,
It's a
Vishal can
juicy
go.
one, isn't it?
Go ahead, Nati.
Go on, Vishal, then.
I was going, oh, it's yeah, I think the client data ownership and all that is obviously the area of concern that we have to be so mindful of whenever we're talking about any of this. So that's an umbrella that we need to be always conscious of. I see AI evolving. I think it's, for me, the advantages are around speed, data triangulation, and data context, and speed and quality. So I think they're the three opportunities I see. Again, there's so many areas that we could dig into here. Qual, quant, whichever kind of coding, all parts of the MR process, I think, is going to get faster and smarter. So, coding isn't just coding, it's then sentiment analysis, or it's again, that's kind of where it's adding value to clients, not just doing what humans did.
Yeah.
So I think it's really going to streamline and add value at different points in the cycle. I think the client concern is a huge one, because the temptation, I think, is for operations is you want to kind of, how do we use all this data that we're sitting on to, start to triangulate and understand industry and vertical trends and nuggets of cohorts, and how teenagers are responding here versus here. And we've got to be so careful about data ownership. So depending on which territory you're in, we have to be so careful with client contracts as to what we can and can't do, because it's an opportunity, but it's also a huge risk. So I think it's, making sure there's legal clarity on where we can start and when we can stop in terms of what we're sitting on. They're my couple of carriers there. Nice, juicy.
Yeah, it is a juicy one. Anyone else with any?
I think one of the things that we're going to see is blurring the line between data production and insights. I think AI is going to enable us to really look at the whole life cycle of research project as a whole.
Okay, yeah, great.
Just building on that, so another aspect is going to be that a lot of times when we see data with human eyes, we tend to miss out on a lot of micro trends. We talk about the big trends that we have observed and probably lose out on the early micro trends that we are going to see. So the quality of insighting is going to change significantly as we look at AI becoming part of Copilot and deliveries and so on. Also, the other aspect, something that we typically pride ourselves in being in the part of insights world, is that there are very customized subjective processes that we put at companies and individuals and within projects as well. So that's something I think AI will help us streamline, so that production becomes of a certain quality, which is scalable and then replicable over a period of time. Once you get that output, of course, bring in your subjectivity and individual brilliance to take it to the next level. But I think the base of production can all be standardized and streamlined, and of course, at pace and at a very, very lower cost. That's another aspect that AI will bring in.
I agree with Vishal. I think immediate insights, I think that's a huge opportunity. And one of the things I really enjoy is the quality management part of it. So how this helps you basically flagging the issues in your data, which I think also has always been an issue for our industry, and I guess will remain that. So I think it's very useful for that as well, to counter that.
Yeah, thank you. Some excellent points there. What are the top 5 risks one has to be cautious about while setting up or outsourcing a GCC? I don't know if we can come up with the top 5, but who would like to come up with the first one?
I think I can go first.
Yeah.
Standardization. So that's really important, a piece of, actually, I would say, like a backbone of really expanding, transitioning whatever situation we are in. But a lot of teams, companies that start on that journey find themselves basically that they don't have specific SOPs and specific this. So building a very strong structure of standard operating procedures, process, RACI matrix, and so on and so forth, and then applying that to scale with other partners.
Yeah. Thanks, Warwick. Any others?
Sure, yes. So I think one of the other mistakes probably you should avoid is, and of course, it's not very easy to really know that part of it, which is picking the wrong partner. And the clear giveaway on that is a partner who keeps saying yes to everything that you're asking for. If that's the partner you've got, you definitely are in the wrong club, as in with the wrong partnership. That's something that you should reassess. Not everything will happen at scale and a very rapid pace. You might want certain things to be done, but I think there are some no's that you have to really start accepting and then move on from there if you really want a successful transition to be done. Where there are times when the ideal case, like Shobit called out, that get your SOPs in place, but they may or may not be in place, and you still want to go ahead with it. So leverage on the partner, ensure that you're able to fall back and trust his vision and guidance on how this can be done. And the partner has done it n number of times, you're just getting started. So falling back on that advisory of the partner is very, very critical. And a partner who says yes to everything is definitely a big pitfall.
Yeah,
I think, Andy, a third one, I think, is feedback loops. I think not having feedback loops means that a version of the truth can be then what everyone's focused on, the headline. And I think making sure that there's data to support, again, the North Star, and you defining success and seeing how it's tracking, what the ROI is. If there's any quality issues, making sure that constant dialogue is happening between the teams. So everyone's focused on the client, not kind of what happened here. And I think in the absence of that, the favorite saying is in the lack of communication, people make things up. So I think it's making sure there's real clarity, roles and responsibility. If something goes wrong, what's the feedback look? What's the course correction? And how you're tracking towards that overall North Star.
Yeah, great. Okay, we're out of time, so I'm going to end this with just one sentence from each of you. What would be a key takeaway for somebody who's sat through this this webinar? I know that I've enjoyed it, but what would be a key takeaway? Rana, can I start with you?
Yeah, benefit from the full talent of a GCC. Don't get only transactional.
Thank you. Natalie?
Be agile and challenge yourself.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sławek?
For me, it would be don't be afraid. Just jump right in and start the journey.
It's a good one. Thank you. Yep. Vishal, for you.
I would say know your appetite of risk and then trust your partner.
Okay. So guys, thank you for your questions. Thank you for your attention, and sorry we couldn't get to all of them. We'll have another, please look out for our next webinar. I'm really hoping that our panel will come back for the next one. And I'm really hoping you all will too. If you want to know more about GCCs, you can download our brochure on the website. You can get in touch with us and request a consultation. So please do those. You should also look out for the next one. Guys, I want to say thank you so much for being on the panel. Really thought-provoking. I'm reminded that even at my age, I can learn new things. And so thank you for coming on here and giving us the benefit of your experience. So it's greatly appreciated.
Thanks, Andy. It was surely
Thanks.
Pleasure.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.